Did you know that there are several new Millennial Republicans elected to the United States Congress? Today, we're going to begin a series of interviews talking with those Millennial Republicans who are entering the U.S. House of Representatives come January. Today, we'll talk with the winner, the Republican, soon to represent the 3rd District of Colorado in the United States Congress, Lauren Boebert. You're watching Jimmy at the Crossroads, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, and we're starting right now.
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said. Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. Come on, Jimmy, what you got?
Hello, my friends. Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to another edition of Jimmy at the Crossroads. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, your host for the program, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner, and it is such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you once again here on the show. Thanks so much for joining us and being a part of the program. Would sure appreciate it if you'd like this video and share it as well. Plus, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Sang Center. That's Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter. And of course, follow all the great work being done by our friends and partners at the Washington Examiner online at washingtonexaminer.com. It's so great to be with you on this Thanksgiving week as we begin a series of interviews that I am so excited about. You know, one of the passions that I have is on how we on the right, those who are conservative, those who are Republican, can win over the younger generations, and particularly as a millennial myself, the millennial generation. And so every time that I see conservative millennials who are stepping up to the plate, every time I see them being victorious and making headway, and they're doing so in a way that is deeply inspiring, I want to make sure that we highlight what's going on, which is why I am so excited to be beginning this series of interviews, and we're working on arranging some others with millennial Republicans about to enter the United States House of Representatives. And our first guest, I am so excited being here in Colorado to welcome to Jimmy at the Crossroads, Lauren Boebert, who just secured the 3rd Congressional District in Colorado after winning a primary where so many people discounted her ability to overcome the odds that were challenging against an incumbent in Scott Tipton. Then she went on to become the Congresswoman in the general election for the 3rd Congressional District, representing a part of Colorado that a lot of people don't think of, because when you're out of this state, you normally think of the Denver metro area, and then, yes, you talk about the mountains, and they're a part of mountains certainly quite a bit in the 3rd Congressional District. But oftentimes when people think about the issues going on in Colorado, they think about what's happening centrally in Denver, but there's so much more in this state. Lauren Boebert, Congresswoman-elect Boebert, I love those words. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And, you know, I think that this race just proved when conservative Republicans run as conservatives on conservative values, conservative principles, we win.
I think that's well put and very true, and I want to congratulate you as well for your victory. You came out on the stage last year when you challenged Beto the Psychedelic Warlord O'Rourke. Now, I didn't give him that nickname. He gave himself that nickname, and he was speaking at a town hall. We've got some video we'll play in a bit, but you challenged him on his, hell yes, we're going to take your guns. What inspired you to do that and also to run for Congress, Lauren Boebert?
Well, Jimmy, as you know, I'm not a politician. I just got fed up with politicians. I am a mom. I have 4 boys, and I'm a small business owner. I am tired of these smooth talking, velvet tongued politicians who lie to us just to get our votes. And then we elect them, and they go to DC, they go to Denver, and they forget who they work for. They overregulate, overtax, overspend, and ultimately destroy everything that we are trying to build. When we elected them on the simple premise to secure our rights. And with Beto O'Rourke, I got frustrated. And as a Christian, I believe that when we're frustrated with something to where it just bothers us night and day and we can't really get off of the subject, I believe it's because we're called to influence that situation for change. And so that frustration really led me to Aurora, Colorado. I got in my car and drove 3 hours to his presidential rally because for years I was told Democrats aren't taking your guns. You Republicans are crazy. No one's coming after your guns. We just want sensible gun control. Some legislation. I've seen those knee-jerk reaction legislation, those bills that have been passed. Those that have been passed that hinder our Second Amendment right to defend ourselves, and finally, Democrats slipped up. And they said exactly what they intend to do. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s and your AK-47s. So I got in my car and drove 3 hours to his presidential rally with my Glock on my hip. And I looked him in the eye and told him, hell no, you're not. And I did that because I didn't see anyone else doing it, Jimmy. I didn't see enough people standing for freedom, but I saw a whole lot of people giving it away. But I learned in that moment, if I speak up for what I believe in, I can affect and represent millions. That became a national rally cry for our Second Amendment right.
Well, and as a resident of Aurora, Colorado myself, and I know you used to live here prior to moving to Rifle, Colorado, where you have your business Shooters Grill, which we'll talk about in a moment, I am just always so frustrated when the media and the left only like to focus on Aurora as an opportunity, and they only come here as an opportunity to talk about how we need to restrict the constitutionally protected Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, Congresswoman-elect Boebert.
Right. They come to Aurora, Colorado to pander, to make people feel bad for a situation, and just in order to get votes for themselves. But I was around for the Columbine shooting. I was around for the Aurora Theater shooting. These are terrible, terrible tragedies. And the one thing that was in common here is citizens were unable to defend themselves. They were unable to protect their own lives and the lives of those around them. Had there been an armed citizen present, there may have been more of an ability to neutralize the threat that was ending lives around them.
Again, we're talking with Congresswoman-elect for the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado, Lauren Boebert. Let's talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive back into the Second Amendment debate and some other key issues that we're facing in the country. So you own a restaurant called Shooters Grill, which has the distinction of, if you go there, and I haven't been there, and at some point I got to make it out to Rifle, and I definitely want to go to Shooters Grill, certainly when we're able to get more latitude. We'll get to that in a moment vis-a-vis the reopening debate. But your staff are armed, and not just armed, but open carrying. You are also a wife and a mother. You obviously have a passion for the Second Amendment and for our constitutional rights. Tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Yes, well, I am a self-taught conservative. So you mentioned the millennials who are entering Congress in this 117th Congress, and I believe that there's a lot of us who have seen the path that the Democrats are taking and seen these socialist policies. And we know that that's not the American dream. That's not America's best. I was actually raised in a Democrat household. My mom believed the lies of politicians. So we lived under these failed policies and believed that you need government to take care of you. We relied on government for food and healthcare and housing. And at 11 years old, Jimmy, I stood in line for bread and cheese. That's not America's best. But when we moved from the Aurora area to the Western Slope to Rifle, Colorado, I got my first job at the Rifle McDonald's, and I saw that if I put my hand to something, I have the ability to be in charge of my own future and create wealth. I remember bringing mom home that first paycheck. I remember the pride and the empowerment that came with earning that. And I learned at a very young age that I could do a better job taking care of myself than government ever could. And now I am living the American dream. I am a small business owner. My husband and I opened Shooter's Grill in 2013, and I have the privilege and the honor of creating jobs, keeping those jobs, and signing the fronts of paychecks. And despite what Democrat governors may say, this job is essential to them. Small businesses are essential. Those paychecks are essential to providing for their families. And I will always fight to make sure that they have the ability to do that. But I'm proud to be a small business owner and living the American dream. I literally went from standing in line waiting for government cheese to now being a representative elect, the first woman in Colorado's 3rd congressional district to have the opportunity to serve the people who live here. And I'm the first mom to do so as well.
That is just such a tremendous story. I'm so glad that you shared that. And I think that one thing you're hitting on is that the millennial generation, to which you and I both belong, is a generation that is much more complicated than a lot of people think in terms of our view set. The life experiences that we've had have shaped how we view the world, but there's just this conventional wisdom that millennials must be and automatically are socialists. You and I certainly demonstrate that that is not the case, but I think there are so many out there who are like, I don't want to just be reliant upon the government. I want to actually be able to move forward as I see fit on my own terms.
Absolutely. And I believe that government now more than ever is trying to promote this idea that they know best, that they are smarter than we are. And that's just not the case. We have the right and the responsibility to be in control of our own lives. And so that's something that I want to continue with this being the land of opportunity, the land of the free, and continue American exceptionalism by keeping the American dream alive.
Again, Congresswoman-elect Lauren Boebert of the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. So in terms of the millennial generation, just have one other question. What do you think are the keys to win over millennials at this point in time, given the economic malaise? I mean, one of the things that resonates with me that I have been seeing and hearing in conversations with parents of young children, and you have multiple children yourself, one of the things that's so striking to me is this educational discussion. That is, schools are closed and kids are forced to be at home in many parts of the state of Colorado and all throughout the country. And I really think school choice is one of those arguments that can help win over more millennials. But what do you think will really help bring that about more?
Well, if there's one thing that we all know about millennials is they know better than anybody else. And so I think that that's one thing, you don't want government dictating every part of your life. These are the most informed and the most independent people that we have in the generations here in America. And so to separate that and say, don't you want to be in charge of your own life? I think that that's huge. And then we do have so many parents right now who are millennials. And I think it's kind of a blessing to have them, our children in the home, because we can kind of direct the way that they're learning and the way their education is going more than we were able to before. So of course I am an advocate for schools opening back up, but we're starting to see what goes on in the classroom and how they're actually being taught and in most cases indoctrinated to rely on government and then be the know all and be all, the end all to all these solutions. But I am a strong advocate for school choice. Being a mom of 4 boys, I know that it's not a one size fits all solution. I actually pulled my boys from public school at one time and put them in a private school for very different reasons. One needed to be challenged more. One needed more attention and more focus on an area. And now they are both thriving as they should be because we were able to kind of cater to what they needed in that time and that season in their life. But unfortunately, when we did that, the tax dollars that we're paying to the school system didn't follow my children. So I think as a mom, being able to have school choice and then also the ability for those dollars to follow my child, to follow the student, would be exponential.
And then also going to the reopening discussion, I think that the idea of government coming in and telling your businesses that they have to shut down, and then the millennial and Gen Z employees at these businesses are told, sorry guys, we have to either cut your wages or we have to cut your hours. Maybe we're going to have to lay you off. Talk to us a little bit about that dynamic too, especially as the owner of a restaurant, Shooter's Grill, that is already being reduced in capacity because of government decision making.
Yes, right now we are at 50% capacity. And back in May, when we weren't allowed to have customers come in and dine in at our establishment, I made the decision to reopen. I wasn't going to wait on bureaucrats to give me an arbitrary opening date. I followed CDC guidelines and I opened responsibly and safely. I knew that there was the potential of consequences to come with that, but I was willing to take that risk and take that stand, really lay my business on the line in hopes that my community and surrounding communities would open up sooner and people could get back to work. And so, I mean, of course, there's potential consequences of fines and jail time. And in my case, I actually lost my food license for about a week, but it was totally worth it. I didn't miss a payroll, and my county actually opened up much sooner than we would have if there was no pushback on the local governing authorities. And so I'm very proud of that stand that I took. But right now we are at only 50% capacity, and small businesses are dying. Throughout this entire pandemic, big box stores have been able to remain open, and they are flourishing in this. We see big tech flourishing in this. We see Amazon flourishing, and the small businesses are dying. It's almost like government is facilitating in the destruction of capitalism and small businesses, to drive us into more of a dependence on socialism, and kind of opening the door for that. But I am on the front lines here to reopen small businesses. Government should not ever be in the business of saying what business is essential and which is not.
Now, of course, there's debate going on in Washington, D.C. We'll see if before you're sworn in, come January, into Congress, whether there is a stimulus package, so-called stimulus package that is approved, or if it's something that comes up in the new year. It does look likely that Joe Biden, the former vice president, will be the next president of the United States. If that is the case, then you have a Democratic president and a Democratic-controlled House, but with a smaller majority than they had before, for sure. So I'm curious your thoughts on the dynamics that may come out in terms of how Washington will function in that way, and also about the discussion of what government can or should do as far as helping people in need and the stimulus and relief debates going on.
Well, I think it's government's responsibility to secure our rights and secure our freedoms while dealing with this pandemic at the same time. I think they're absolutely capable of that, but not stripping us of so many of our rights in the process. And I have not yet conceded that Joe Biden would win the presidency.
I'm not saying I'm conceding that. I'm
me,
saying it looks increasingly likely, but I'm not saying President-elect Biden yet. I'm waiting on that one for sure. I agree.
Right.
With you.
Yes, I'm with you. It's not over yet. But of course, you know, we do have to look at every angle and what this could look like. I am with having the Democrats having a slimmer majority in the House, that maybe we can agree on some things and get some things accomplished for the American people. I mean, that's what we're there for. But unfortunately, we've just seen so many things politicized that I don't know if I'm willing to do that. I just went through a bipartisan orientation process with freshmen, and it's almost like that there is a solid brick wall between the Republicans and the Democrats. I can think of two Democrats that I actually had meaningful conversations with during orientation. The rest, it was like they weren't allowed to communicate with us. They weren't allowed to be friendly with us, and that's really unfortunate that that's where we are right now. But I do believe that we have a responsibility to work together for the American people. I really hope that we can hold the Senate because that will be our safeguard. I cannot even imagine what America would look like with a Democrat. I should be saying Democratic, but when they start acting Democratic, I'll say it. But with a Democrat majority, and so I believe it's government's role to inform people of the risk and provide us with guidelines of safety, but not to have these draconian mandates.
Just a few minutes left with our guest, Lauren Boebert, Republican elected Congresswoman-elect for the 3rd Congressional District in Colorado. You hit on something very important, I think, that we should highlight. You talked with 2 Democrats who were willing to engage in meaningful conversations. The rest seem to refuse to. It seems like conservatives, Republicans are the ones these days that are much more willing to engage in actual dialogue and conversation that will help move our country forward, whereas the left would like to shut that down. Speak to that for a moment, because I think that's something of interest, too, to the millennial generation.
Yes, well, I believe that right now conservatives are returning back to our founding principles now more than ever, returning to those documents that have kept our country so strong and solid for a couple of centuries now, more than a couple of centuries, and just bringing the conversation back to that, bringing the conversation back to, as I mentioned, American exceptionalism. That's where we need to get to. We see Nancy Pelosi, and she has politicized this pandemic so greatly, so much that she didn't even want President Trump's name on the next round of stimulus checks. And so she did everything that she could to block that from the American people. It's really unfortunate that that's what we've come to. But I believe that conservatives and Republicans now more than ever are wanting to find that common ground and actually promote prosperity and well-being for the American people.
Yeah, I think there's something so stunning about the way in which our society has trended, where there is an entire block of Americans who are unwilling to have conversations with the other because they believe in all sorts of epithets, and they'd much rather call us names than actually have some kind of meaningful discussion. And I alluded to millennials before, because I think most millennials are actually interested in dialogue. They want to have that kind of engagement, but you have these high-profile Democrats and people on the left who are unwilling to have those conversations and malign those who are willing to engage, and that truly is unfortunate. Congresswoman-elect Lauren Boebert, let me ask you just 2 final questions. One is, on the Second Amendment and our constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms, what do you want to do in Congress in order to ensure that we don't have the United States government, the federal government, running roughshod over our constitutional rights?
All of us are there to secure the rights of the American people. And if that means standing strong for the Second Amendment, that's what that means. But I also stand, I will stand and fight and defend the First Amendment as well. So we are there to secure the rights of the American people. These aren't rights that were given to anyone by government. These are our God-given rights that government was instituted to secure for us. And so as far as the Second Amendment goes, I will always be a strong advocate in the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and make sure that the federal government especially doesn't infringe on that and tread on that more than they have already. I absolutely intend to get my concealed carry permit in Washington, D.C. and have a way to protect myself. I'm 5'0", 100 pounds, and I'm not going to reside in a city in America, in Washington, D.C., where the crime rate is 158% higher than the national average, and not be able to defend myself. And so I want to be there to make a strong, reasonable case for all Americans that it is their right to defend their most basic right of life.
And I'm so glad you brought in that out. First Amendment, Second Amendment, these are rights that are natural and protected by government, supposed to be protected by government and not trampled upon by the government. Very well put. And when we let you go, by the way, I will go ahead and play that clip of your exchange with Beto, the psychedelic warlord O'Rourke, because I cannot not show the audience what brought you into prominence here in Colorado. Lauren Boebert, again, Congresswoman-elect for the 3rd Congressional District in Colorado. Final question. What are you most looking forward to from a personal standpoint, especially having been undergoing the orientation for Congress and getting into there come January, early January, when you're sworn in, what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to serving the people in Colorado's 3rd district. I've already I already have a great team that I'm beginning to assemble here to make sure our constituent services are the best in Colorado and hopefully the best in the nation. But I am just so looking forward to the opportunity to serving them and then serving alongside so many other principled, freedom-loving patriots in Congress.
You know, that is the thing, is when you have, shall we say comrades? Is that okay? We're not talking about communists. We're talking about the opposite. But comrades in arms for freedom that you can actually align yourself with on behalf of the people of the 3rd Congressional District and all Americans, that certainly is going to make it worth it, especially when you never know how much craziness is going to come about with government, especially with the Democrats still in control of the House of Representatives. But Congresswoman-elect Lauren Boebert, 3rd Congressional District in Colorado, thanks again for joining us here on this show. I really appreciate it, and congrats as well on your victory.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you as well here. Once again, Congresswoman-elect Lauren Boebert of Colorado joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. I enjoyed that conversation, especially because I know that Congresswoman-elect Boebert is a woman of passion, and clearly she has clarity of purpose. Her goal is to advance the protections for our constitutionally protected natural rights. She's a small business owner. Shooter's Grill, as we mentioned before, is in Rifle, Colorado. It's a restaurant where the waitresses, for example, are almost all packing. And they are open carrying, no less, because that restaurant wants to make sure that there is a clear affirmation somewhere of our constitutionally protected natural right to keep and bear arms. So I have to tell you just a little bit of background in terms of Congresswoman-elect Boebert. I first met and interviewed her on the radio after her exchange with Beto the psychedelic warlord O'Rourke. And by the way, let me just remind you, Beto O'Rourke gave himself that nickname back when he was on some listserv or something. It was his online username. I didn't give it to him. I just like reminding folks that Beto is the psychedelic warlord O'Rourke. But I digress. Needless to say, she challenged O'Rourke in Aurora, Colorado, and was surrounded by people who disagreed with her, who tried to shout her down and prevent her from asking a tough question to a presidential candidate. I want to share what she had to say, and also the line from O'Rourke that he said in a debate that led her to make that statement to him directly at a town hall in Aurora, Colorado. But I do want to just note that it really does take courage to show up at something like this and to speak your mind when you know that it is not going to be appreciated by a lot of the people who are there around you. Take a look.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
My name is Lauren, and I drove down here from Rifle, Colorado to speak with you today. I was one of the gun-owning Americans that heard your speech and heard what you had to say regarding hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s and your AR. And your
Let's be respectful. Let's be respectful.
Well, I am here to say hell no, you're not. So with that, I would like to know how you intend to legislate evil, because it is not the gun, it is the heart of the man that does that. We all have stories. Excuse me.
Let's allow her to finish, please. We
can all have these stories. We all have the experiences. I was living in Aurora during Columbine. I had just recently moved when the Aurora shootings happened, yet I have very close ties here. Yet all of those people were there defenseless. They had no way to defend themselves against a crazed shooter. So I want to know how you intend to legislate the hearts of men and leave American citizens like myself, American mothers. I have 4 children. I'm 5'0", 100 pounds. Cannot really defend myself with a fist.
It's okay. Please let's allow her to finish.
I don't have my AR-15 today. I have my Glock. Well, you shouldn't have it. Don't worry, sir. I have your back. Anyway, I want to know how you're going to legislate that, because a criminal, by defense, breaks the law. So all you're going to do is restrict law-abiding citizens like myself. We all know that you, sir, have a criminal history, and I understand that burglars do not like armed defense.
It's okay.
Yes, sir. Burglars do not like armed defense, yet that is a right that we have that shall not be infringed in America.
Okay, I really appreciate the question.
Okay, so that was Congresswoman-elect Boebert in 2019 in an exchange with Beto O'Rourke. And I do have to say this about the former Congressman O'Rourke, that it was good of him and mature of him to respectfully say, let her speak, let her finish her piece. Because if you think about it, a lot of politicians wouldn't do that. So I do have to give the psychedelic warlord a little bit of credit for that, even if his policy positions are something that I vehemently disagree with. Hey, he was willing to listen to her. And I wanted to share that so you could see what brought Boebert to prominence in Colorado and then wider across the country. And that's because she actually had the audacity to challenge a candidate for president of the United States, the Democratic side, on her own at a town hall, surrounded by so many people who disagreed with her. There is a lot of courage that's required, especially in this day and age that we have experienced the last couple of years. That's why I wanted to share that. I also want to note that it is important to have members of Congress who are small business owners, who understand what small businesses are going through. That's encouraging. It's important. People need to know in Congress what it's like to run a business, and especially a small business. In addition, I want to make one other comment, which is in terms of millennials. There are, I believe, 6 millennials elected to the United States Congress who were Republicans. I think 4 Democrats. 3, half of the Millennial Republicans elected to the U.S. House, they are, that just freshly elected, they are women. Demonstrating that no, the left does not have a monopoly in government or out of government on the millennial generation. Are conservatives at a disadvantage? Yes, certainly. Is the center right facing an uphill battle with younger voters? Yes, as it's always been the case. And certainly with a double whammy of the previous recession that a lot of millennials entered college or graduated college or just gotten into the workforce during, they're now facing a double whammy of this current crisis in terms of the economic malaise. And it could make the center-right argument for free markets, for example, more challenging, but not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. And they are proving, these Republicans elected to Congress are proving that millennials can and often are passionate about what the Constitution stands for and what the role of government really is, and the constraints on government, and the list goes on. So it's very encouraging to see that, which is why I want to highlight it, why we're going to be, I hope, having on every one of the millennials just elected to the United States House of Representatives in this cycle, who are Republicans, on this program to talk about their experience and what they've gone through and what their views are, introduce you to this new up-and-coming crop of millennials who are Republicans. And funny enough, we will be having on Congresswoman-elect Kat Cammack of Florida's 3rd Congressional District. And I find this funny because Cammack is a native of Colorado, Boebert is a native of Florida, and now they are representing the opposite states in Congress in the 3rd Congressional District there. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm easily amused and I am entertained by that fact. Anyway, that is it for us today here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. My thanks to Congresswoman-elect Boebert for joining us, especially in this Thanksgiving week. I'm also thankful for the Washington Examiner, our partners and friends here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, and especially to you for liking, subscribing, following, sharing, all those good things to our content. By the way, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. We will be back with so much more great interviews and content up ahead here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Stay with us in the coming days and weeks. In the meantime, happy Thanksgiving, have a great time, and as always, may God bless America.